The rain was falling steadily, soft but relentless, painting the world in shades of grey and silver. Drops tapped gently on the window panes, creating a quiet rhythm that matched the slow pace of the day. Streets glistened with puddles, and the air smelled fresh, like the earth was breathing after a long thirst. Most people stayed indoors, wrapped in warm blankets or hurried from one shelter to another, trying to avoid the wet chill. But she didn't mind the rain. She was a simple woman, someone you might pass by without a second glance. Not flashy or loud, just quietly going about her day. Her hair was damp from the drizzle, strands sticking lightly to her forehead. She wore a plain coat, the kind that had seen many seasons, but still kept her warm. Her steps were calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes from knowing the small comforts of life. She moved slowly, careful not to splash through the puddles, her eyes scanning the street almost absent-mindedly, lost in thought. Outside, the world felt different in the rain. The usual noise seemed softened, as if everything was wrapped in a gentle hush. Cars moved slower, their headlights casting soft glows on wet roads. Trees bowed slightly under the weight of raindrops, and even the wind whispered instead of howling. It was a quiet day, perfect for reflection, or for noticing things that usually go unseen. As she walked, a sudden movement caught her eye, a figure standing by the side of the road, just beneath a flickering street lamp. It was a man, tall and thin, wearing a uniform that told a story she didn't know yet. His clothes were soaked, dark patches showing where the rain had seeped through. His shoulders hunched slightly, as if the weight of the world pressed down on him. He looked tired, maybe cold, and his gaze was fixed on the distant horizon, not noticing the storm around him. For a moment, she hesitated. It was easy to walk past, to keep to her path, to pretend she hadn't seen him. After all, the world is full of strangers, and sometimes everyone is wrapped up in their own troubles. But something about him, maybe the way he stood so still in the pouring rain, or the quiet sadness in his eyes, made her stop. Without overthinking, she stepped closer. The air between them was heavy with the smell of rain and earth. She offered a small smile, gentle and unspoken, and without saying a word, she reached for her car keys. The soldier looked up, surprised, but there was a flicker of hope that crossed his face. She unlocked the car door and opened it wide, a silent invitation. The rain continued to fall, but inside the car, there was a small moment of shelter, a pause from the storm outside. The engine hummed softly as she settled behind the wheel, ready to drive through the rain, carrying more than just a passenger. He slid into the passenger seat, water dripping from the edges of his uniform onto the floor mat. The cold had soaked through his clothes, clinging to his skin like a heavy cloak. She glanced over, noticing the tired lines etched deeply across his face, the kind that come from places where peace feels distant. His eyes, though, held something steadier, a quiet strength that didn't fade even in the rain. The car's heater began to hum softly, warming the space between them. Outside, the rain continued its steady drum, blurring the world beyond the glass. Inside, the air smelled faintly of leather and wet earth, a small shelter from the storm outside. Neither of them spoke at first. Words seemed unnecessary, as if the silence itself was enough to fill the space between two strangers brought together by chance. She kept her eyes on the road, the headlights cutting through the wet darkness ahead. The windshield wipers swept rhythmically, swiping away the raindrops like they were erasing the past. Occasionally, her glance would flick to the soldier sitting beside her, the way his hands rested on his lap, still trembling slightly from the cold, or the way his jaw clenched as if holding back a flood of thoughts. There was a heaviness in the air, the kind you feel when someone carries more than just the weight of their belongings. She wondered about his story. Where had he come from? What had he seen? She imagined the long nights, the uncertain days, the moments when courage was all that kept him moving forward. Her own life suddenly felt smaller beside his, quieter but no less real. The car rolled through puddles that splashed against the tires, each ripple a reminder of the rain's persistence. Outside, the street lamps flickered, casting brief shadows that danced across the dashboard. The world seemed paused, caught between moments. She thought about how sometimes, strangers cross our paths in the most unexpected ways, bringing with them stories that touch parts of us we never knew existed. Though the ride was short, it was filled with silent exchanges, small glances, the way their breaths fogged the windows, the shared warmth in a cold night. She felt a connection that didn't need words, a simple kindness bridging two lives for a brief moment. In that quiet car, moving steadily through the rain, something shifted. He finally spoke, his voice low and steady, breaking the stillness. His words were few but heavy with meaning, hinting at the life he left behind and the hope he carried with him now. She listened, not interrupting, letting the quiet strength of his story fill the space. The rain continued, relentless but somehow less overwhelming now. She realized that in offering a ride, she wasn't just giving shelter from the storm outside. She was sharing a moment of understanding, a simple act of humanity that meant more than either of them could say. The journey wasn't just about distance, it was about connection, about being seen and offering comfort when it was needed most. As the car moved forward, the city lights blurred through the rain-soaked windows, and she knew this night, this ride, was something neither of them would forget. The car slowed as she reached her neighborhood, the familiar houses lining the wet streets glowing softly under the streetlights. The rain had eased to a gentle drizzle now, but the quietness that settled inside the car felt heavier than the storm outside. She glanced at the soldier beside her, still wrapped in his soaked uniform, and felt a tug in her chest she couldn't explain. She pulled up in front of her small house, the porch light flickering weakly in the damp air. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world outside seemed distant, muted by the rain and night. Then came a sudden, soft knock on the car window, a sound sharp enough to cut through the silence, yet gentle, almost hesitant. She turned toward the door, surprised, wondering who could be there in the late hour and rain. Her hand trembled slightly as she unlocked the door and stepped out into the cool night. The soldier followed, shaking the water from his shoulders as the rain continued to sprinkle down. The knock came again, this time from the front door of the house behind her. Heart pounding with curiosity, she moved closer, her footsteps quiet on the wet porch. When she opened the door, standing there was a figure she never expected. The person wasn't a stranger, but someone tied deeply to the soldier's story, a connection that changed everything she thought she knew. The air seemed to shift, charged with something powerful but unspoken. The soldier's eyes met hers, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on both of them. She stepped back to let the visitor in, the warmth from the house meeting the chill of the night. Inside, the rain faded to a distant memory as conversations began, quiet, serious, but filled with a strange comfort. Pieces of the soldier's life started to unfold, stories that explained his presence on that rainy street and the reason he had accepted a ride from a simple woman like her. There was a moment when the soldier reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. The edges were frayed, but the image was clear, a snapshot of a life paused in time, holding memories of love, loss, and hope. She looked at the photo, then back at him, and something inside her shifted again. The soldier was not just a man caught in the rain, he was a story unfolding, a reminder of resilience and unexpected grace. Outside, the rain picked up again, tapping lightly on the windows, creating a steady rhythm to the quiet night. Inside, the three of them sat together, connected by something invisible yet undeniable. It was a moment born from kindness, a simple act that led to a deeper understanding neither had anticipated. She realized how quickly life could change in the blink of an eye, how a single choice, to stop, to help, to listen, could open doors to new paths and unexpected truths. The soldier's story was now part of hers, woven into the fabric of that rainy night and the knock that changed everything. As the night deepened, the rain became a gentle background melody, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, moments of light and connection can be found. The woman, the soldier, and the visitor shared a space that felt both fragile and strong, a space where strangers became something more, and the simple act of giving a ride became the beginning of a life changed forever. The night wore on, but the warmth inside the small house grew stronger with every passing moment. The soldier sat quietly, his gaze shifting between the two women who had come into his life in such an unexpected way. There was a softness now in his tired eyes, as if the weight he had carried for so long had begun to lift. The air was thick with unspoken stories, memories folded carefully like fragile paper, waiting to be shared. She watched him closely, noticing the small things, the way his hands trembled slightly when he reached for a cup of tea, or how his voice softened when he spoke of things that mattered most. There was a world behind those eyes, a world shaped by sacrifice, hope, and loss. It was a world she had never known, yet now felt strangely connected to. As the conversation unfolded, bits of his journey came to light: days spent far from home, faces he had seen only in fleeting moments, and the relentless uncertainty that comes with being a soldier. He spoke of comrades lost, of dreams postponed, and the aching desire for peace. The woman listened, her heart growing heavy with each word. She realized that this stranger, once just a figure in the rain, carried with him a lifetime of experiences that few could understand. The visitor, too, shared pieces of the past, stories that intertwined with the soldiers in ways that surprised them both. There was laughter, tears, and moments of silence that said more than words ever could. Together, they created a fragile bond, a temporary family shaped by kindness and shared history. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. The night sky peeked through the windows, stars blinking softly as if acknowledging the moment. Inside, the soldier looked around the room and found something unexpected: a sense of belonging, a place where he could rest, even if just for a little while. She felt it too, the shift in the air, the gentle reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out in ways no one could predict. A simple ride in the rain had led to this moment, to a night filled with connection and healing. As dawn approached, the city outside slowly began to stir. Lights flickered on in neighboring houses, and the distant hum of early traffic grew louder. The soldier stood by the window, looking out at a world that felt both familiar and new. The past was still there, waiting in the shadows, but so was hope. The woman moved closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. It was a quiet gesture, but full of meaning, an unspoken promise that no matter what came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The knock on her door had started it all, but it was the choices they made afterward that truly mattered. In that small room, surrounded by the soft glow of morning light, they found something precious: a moment suspended in time, where kindness bridged the gap between strangers and changed lives forever. And though the rain had stopped, the impact of that night would continue, carried in their hearts as they stepped forward into whatever awaited. Days passed, but the memory of that rainy night stayed vivid in her mind. The quiet moments in the car, the unexpected visitor at her door, the soldiers' stories, they all lingered like a gentle echo, impossible to shake. Life had a way of moving forward, fast and relentless, but something inside her had changed. She found herself looking out the window during quiet afternoons, watching the sky shift from stormy gray to soft blue, wondering about the soldier's journey after that night. Was he still carrying the same heavy burdens? Had the warmth of her kindness made even the smallest difference? Questions like these stirred in her heart, mixing with a new awareness of how fragile and precious life really was. Her daily routines, once so ordinary, now felt touched by something deeper. The way sunlight filtered through the trees, the sound of distant laughter, even the smell of fresh rain on the pavement, these little things reminded her of that night and the connection she had made. It was as if the world had opened up just a little wider, inviting her to see beyond the surface. She began to notice kindness everywhere: in the smile of a neighbor, the helping hand offered to a stranger, the quiet patience of someone standing in line. It was no longer just about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about the small, simple acts that ripple outward, creating waves of change in ways unseen but deeply felt. Sometimes, when the evening grew quiet and the house was still, she would find herself reaching for the photo the soldier had shown her. The edges were worn, the colors faded, but the image held a powerful story. She kept it carefully, a reminder of how one moment could connect lives in ways she never expected. The soldier's presence in her life had awakened something, a call to pay attention, to open her heart even when it seemed easier to stay closed. She thought about the many others who, like him, carried invisible battles and untold stories. How many could be reached with just a bit of kindness, a moment of understanding? Her friends noticed the change in her too. There was a new lightness in her smile, a softness in her eyes. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of experience, not her own alone, but borrowed from the stories she had been trusted with. She became more patient, more present, as if that night had taught her how to truly see the world around her. Though the soldier had moved on, the ripple of that night stayed with her. It was a quiet but powerful force, a reminder that every choice matters, that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes the smallest moments can change the course of a life. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the rain, the knock on her door, and the simple ride had set something in motion, something that would continue to grow, long after the storm had passed. Months slipped by like gentle whispers, and the memory of that rainy night remained alive in her thoughts. Life had returned to its usual rhythm: errands, quiet evenings, simple meals, yet beneath the surface, a subtle transformation had taken hold. She found herself pausing more often, noticing the world with sharper eyes, catching moments others might miss. One afternoon, as she walked through a crowded market, the laughter of children echoed between the stalls, blending with the scents of fresh bread and blooming flowers. Her gaze settled on a young man wearing a worn jacket, sitting alone on a bench, shoulders hunched as if carrying a heavy load. Without thinking, she crossed the street and offered a smile, the same gentle kindness she had shown that rainy night. He looked up, surprised, and for a moment, their eyes met, a silent exchange that spoke of pain, hope, and the unexpected comfort in being seen. She sat beside him, letting the noise of the market fade into the background. In that brief encounter, she felt the same quiet connection that had changed everything months before. The world is full of stories waiting to be heard, she realized. Every person carries a weight, a history, a journey. And sometimes, all it takes is one simple act: a ride, a smile, a moment of attention, to remind someone they are not alone. She thought about the soldier often, imagining where he might be now. Did he remember the night as clearly as she did? Had her kindness helped him find a flicker of light in the darkness? She hoped so. It was enough to know that in a vast, busy world, their paths had crossed and left a mark. Her life felt fuller, richer, not because of anything grand, but because of the small moments that stitched together a new understanding. Kindness was no longer just a word, it was a living thread woven through her days. She began volunteering at local shelters, offering her time to those who needed it most. Each smile she received in return fueled her heart, a quiet reminder that the ripple of goodness never truly ends. At night, when the house grew still and the world outside hushed, she sometimes thought back to the knock on her door, that single sound that had unlocked a door to a new way of seeing life. It wasn't just a memory, it was a calling. She wanted others to know that kindness matters, that no act is too small, and that the simplest gestures can change the course of a life. Everyone has the power to be that unexpected light in someone's storm. And so, she moved forward, carrying with her the lessons learned in the rain. Each day became an opportunity to listen, to help, to connect. Because in a world that can feel so vast and indifferent, it's these small acts of humanity that create the most profound change. The woman who once simply gave a soldier a ride had found something far greater, a purpose rooted in compassion, a reminder that every heart can be touched, and every life can be changed by a moment of kindness. Since that rainy night, the woman's world felt different, quieter yet fuller, as if something invisible had been gently woven into the fabric of her days. It wasn't just about what happened then, but about the meaning she carried forward. Small moments now held new weight, each one a chance to reach out and touch a life. She began to see kindness everywhere, in the way a stranger held the door open, in the smile exchanged between neighbors, in the soft words spoken to calm a worried child. It reminded her that the world is built on countless small acts, often unnoticed but powerful all the same. Sometimes, all it takes is a simple gesture to change everything. On her morning walks, she would pause to help an elderly man with his groceries, or share an umbrella with someone caught in the rain. These weren't grand or heroic acts, but small ripples that made the world feel a little warmer. Each time, she felt a quiet joy, a sense that giving, even in the smallest way, could create connections that stretched far beyond the moment. Sometimes she thought back to the soldier, the man who had stepped into her life so unexpectedly. She imagined him moving forward, carrying with him a piece of that kindness, and hoped that wherever he was, he had found peace. She knew their brief encounter had changed her, but she also believed it had touched him in ways she could only guess. The knock on her door had been more than just a sound, it had been a turning point. It was a reminder that life often surprises us, that moments of grace can appear when we least expect them. It was a call to be open, to listen, and to act. In the quiet of her home, she kept the photo the soldier had shown her, a small, worn image that spoke of love, loss, and hope. It was a symbol of the fragile but enduring human spirit, a reminder that behind every face is a story waiting to be told. Her story, too, had become part of something larger. The woman who once saw herself as simple and unnoticed had become a beacon of kindness in her own small world. Her actions, though modest, had the power to inspire others, to remind them that they are never truly alone. And in this way, the ripple continued, spreading quietly, steadily, like the gentle patter of rain on a windowpane. It carried a message: that kindness is never wasted, that every connection matters, and that sometimes, the smallest moments hold the greatest power to change lives. She understood now that we all have the ability to be that unexpected light, that helping hand, that warm refuge in the storm. And with every choice to show kindness, the world becomes a little brighter, a little softer, and a little more full of hope.